My father did not believe in anything he could not measure. That is important to understand. He was an engineer, civil engineer, 38 years, bridges mostly. The kind of man who looked at a structure and immediately began calculating load and stress and the distance between what a thing was and what it was pretending to be. He applied that to everything, not just bridges, to people, to claims, to stories. He was not unkind about it, but he was precise. And so when he called me in September of 2021 and said, "Patricia, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without deciding what you think before I finish," I knew it was serious. He had never once in my life asked me to suspend judgment before he spoke. He was 77 years old. He had been living alone since my mother died, in the house in East Corinth, Vermont, that they had moved to in 1987, when my brother and I were teenagers, and that he had never considered leaving, even after she was gone, even after we had both moved away. He said he needed to tell me something before he forgot it. His memory was not what it had been. Not dangerously so. But he was aware of it, with the precision he brought to everything, and he had decided that certain things needed to be said, while they could still be said accurately. I said, "Okay, Dad, tell me." And he did. East Corinth is a small town, very small. The kind of Vermont town that looks like a postcard and functions like a community, which is different from looking like one. Old farmhouses, a general store, a church with a white steeple, and around all of it, hills, the Green Mountains, which are not dramatic mountains, not the kind that make you feel small. They are old mountains, forested, folded, full of sugar maples that go red and orange in October, and then go bare and gray and stay that way until May. My father had walked those hills for 34 years, every morning, weather permitting, and in Vermont, weather rarely fails to permit, if you are willing to dress for it. He walked the same route, with variations, for 34 years. He knew those hills. He had been knowing them, he said, in a particular way, since 2009. He first noticed it in the spring of 2009. He had walked a new route that morning, up a logging road that had not been used in years, that climbed the east face of the ridge behind the house, and came out on a flat shelf of land about 800 feet above the valley. He had been to that shelf before, but not often. When he got there, he found something he had not seen before. A structure? He is precise about what he means by structure. He does not mean a building, or anything resembling a building. He means a deliberate arrangement of material. 6 or 7 large branches, each 8 to 12 feet long, leaned together in a rough cone, at the edge of the shelf, where the land dropped away into the valley. The branches were from 3 different tree species, which meant they had been gathered, not broken from a single tree. The base ends were set in the ground, not lying on it. The whole thing was about 9 feet tall. He stood and looked at it for a long time. He is a structural engineer. He knows what things that are made look like, versus what things that happen look like. This was made. He writes, he had given me notes, typed, single-spaced. When I arrived in Vermont 2 days after the phone call, he writes, I considered all natural explanations. Wind damage, animal activity, random accumulation. I rejected all of them. The orientation of the branches was not random. The selection of material was not random. The placement at the edge of the shelf, where whatever built it would have a clear view of the valley below, was not random. Something built this. Something with an intention. He did not tell my mother. He told me 30 years later, on the phone, because he was 77 and his memory was going and he wanted it said. I asked him why he had not told anyone at the time. He said, because I didn't know what to say. Because I am an engineer. Because I know what people would have said. And because, Patricia, the honest truth is that I was not sure I had permission to say it. It was not mine. Whatever made it there for its own reasons. Telling people felt like a violation of something. I asked him, a violation of what? He was quiet for a moment. He said, privacy, I think. The word sounds strange applied to this, but it is the word that fits. He went back to the shelf. Not immediately. He is a methodical man. He waited 3 weeks and went back because he wanted to see if it was still there or whether it had been temporary. It was still there. He went back monthly for the first year. It was always there. In the second year, he started finding others. Not on the shelf, on the ridge, at intervals. Different in construction, but similar in intention. Deliberate arrangements of material in locations that suggested awareness of the landscape. Placed where they would have views, or placed where they would be sheltered, or placed where 2 trails converged, as if marking something. He documented each one. He was a precise man. He photographed them. He measured them. He noted the GPS coordinates, which he had to learn to use, because this was 2009 and he was 65, and GPS was newer to him than it would be to a younger person. But he learned. He has 17 documented structures, over 12 years, across about 4 miles of ridge. He showed me the documentation. I sat at his kitchen table and went through it for 2 hours. It is meticulous. It is the most careful piece of citizen science I've ever seen. And my father spent 12 years doing it alone, in the hills above East Corinth, Vermont, telling no one. He saw it once. He tells me this near the end of the phone call, almost as an afterthought. Though I do not think it is an afterthought. I think he has been building toward it. It was in October of 2017. He had gone up to the shelf on a clear morning, the peak of foliage, the valley below him red and orange and yellow in the early light. He had gone to check on the original structure, which had been maintained, he believed, over 8 years. Repaired when branches fell or rotted, added to in ways he could track because he had documented the original so carefully. He was sitting on a rock at the edge of the shelf, looking at the valley, when he heard something in the forest behind him. He turned. It was standing at the tree line. He writes, I am going to tell you what I saw with the same precision I have brought to everything else in this document. It was large, significantly larger than any person, and proportioned differently, wider in the shoulders and longer in the arm. Dark, brownish black, standing upright, fully upright, with a quality of stillness that I associate with things that are accustomed to being still. It was looking at me. I was looking at it. The light was good. The distance was approximately 25 meters. I had my glasses. I saw it clearly. He writes, I thought immediately of the structures. I thought, this is who built them. This is who has been maintaining them for 8 years. And I thought, which I did not expect to think, thank you. Because I had spent 8 years walking up to this shelf and documenting what was here, and something had spent 8 years building things and maintaining them and moving through this ridge, and we had been, in our separate ways, paying attention to the same country. And that felt like something. I am an engineer. I do not usually deal in things that feel like something. But that felt like something. He stood. It stood. For about 2 minutes. And then it turned and went back into the forest. And my father sat back down on his rock and looked at the valley and thought about what it meant to spend 34 years walking the same hills, and what else might spend that kind of time in a place, and whether, if you spent long enough in the same place with enough attention, something notices and comes to the edge of the trees and lets you see it. I went to Vermont 2 days after the phone call. I stayed for a week. My father showed me the documentation. He walked me up to the shelf. He showed me the original structure, which was still there, still maintained, 12 years on. I stood at the edge of the shelf and looked at the valley. The leaves were mostly down by then, the hills gray and bare, the valley below quiet in the October light. I said, "Did you ever go back after 2017? He said, "Every week, until my knees made the climb unreasonable." "About 2 years ago," I said. "And?" He said, "The structures are still there. Someone is still maintaining them." I check with the binoculars from the lower path when I can. I said, "Dad, why are you telling me this now?" He looked at the valley. He said, "Because I want someone else to know it happened. Because I want it to exist somewhere outside my own head. And because, Patricia, I am 77 years old, and my memory is going. And I have spent 12 years documenting something that I believe is important, and I would like the documentation to go somewhere useful when I cannot take care of it anymore." I said, "What do you want me to do with it?" He said, "Whatever seems right. You always had better judgment than me about what seems right." This is not true. My father has excellent judgment. But I understood what he meant. He meant, "I trust you with it. I am telling you this now because he died in March. Quietly. At home, in the house in East Corinth. He was 79 years old. I have the documentation. 17 structures. 12 years of photographs and measurements and GPS coordinates. And one account, written in single-spaced type, of a clear October morning in 2017, on a shelf of land 800 feet above the valley, when a civil engineer named Richard Holloway stood at the edge of what he understood, and something at the edge of the forest met him there. He said it felt like something. He was right. It feels like something. It feels like what it is, which is a man who spent 34 years paying attention to a place, and a place that, eventually, paid attention back. His documentation is accurate. I've verified what I can verify. The structures are real. They are still there. And in the hills above East Corinth, Vermont, on a ridge that my father walked every morning for 34 years, something is still moving through the sugar maples, still building, still maintaining, as it has been, since before my father found the first one, since before my father, since before anyone who has a name we can put in a document. He would want me to note that. He was precise about those things. He always was.